Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And as always, I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Julia James. Julia, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me as your guest. I'm looking forward to today's show.
All right, thank you so much. Julia, you have another name, MacLeod, right?
Yes, that's my married name.
Okay. I kind of struggle to pronounce that. Julia is a strategist, coach, educator, and speaker. She helps high capacity women, caregivers, and entrepreneurs navigate life's unexpected challenges without staying trapped in overwhelm. Her work comes from real life experience, managing complex seasons, supporting family, building businesses, and learning how to create clarity when life feels anything but simple. Through her background in education, business, and legal literacy, she helps people move from survival mode into practical action with compassion and confidence. Today, we will discuss handling life's unexpected twists, reducing overwhelm, creating clear next steps, and how to keep moving forward when the pressure feels heavy. Once again, Julia, welcome to Control or Be Controlled.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that introduction.
Thank you. That was very, very, very beautiful. And
Okay,
sometimes you listen to other people and you don't realize how much you've done or accomplished in your life. And when someone gives you that kind of introduction, it's very humbling.
thank you
I'm
very much.
grateful.
I'm glad. So let's get into the questions I have here for you. Okay, so you became the person people turn to when life feels overwhelming. Can you share with my audience how that journey began for you?
Oh, wow. Um, I could start back when I was a baby, but I won't start there. I think everybody has their life challenges, and I like to frame it as something of a metaphor. My favorite metaphor nowadays is navigating life's curly twists and turns. My mom had me, and she gave me a backstory about how I was in the hospital for almost a year with heart trouble, lung trouble, and she used to call me her little birdie. Um, I coined all of this and started pulling all of this information together, and as what you see today on paper from 2023 into where we are now. My mom told me before she passed away with melanoma cancer, she said, my birdie has finally learned to fly. And I had to sit with that for a very long time to remember or to think about what that means or what that can mean. We often equate um, life as hard, but I have learned that we can reframe things or look at things from a different points of view. You don't have, no one ever has to stay stuck. So for me, um, I started becoming my mom's caregiver. Um, we thought won our battle with cancer, but ultimately she passed away Thanksgiving 2023. Then my husband got sick and we thought he had Parkinson's, but we realized that he had MSA, multiple system atrophy, in 2025 of July. So it's almost like having, you have all these big dreams and these thoughts and these desires for life, and then all of a sudden life doesn't go as planned. You could either falter, fold, or you can pick yourself up, reframe the situation, and change your perspective. And life comes to this one point. I think sometimes it's a decision. When God gives you the opportunity to wake up, he gives you air in your lungs. He gives you the sight He gives you the ability to move and breathe. You could either be upset about the circumstances, or you can decide to move into what I say decision mode and activation mode. I don't think sometimes we have a decision mode or decision making or permission problem. We have a productivity or a execution problem. So challenges for me, I decide to and what that's going to look like. And I could either be a victim, or I can decide to be somebody that's resilient and push through it. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So, uh, can you share why high capacity women, caregivers, and entrepreneurs, why do they often struggle when life becomes unpredictable?
And that is how do they struggle when life comes unpredictable? There's many ways to struggle. There's um, as a someone who is just here on a mission to help bring light and life, um, and encouragement to help other people realize their potential. I have a acronym I like to share sometimes when I say thrive and grow. I want people to know this one thing. If they can leave away with one thing today, how do you represent your greatness in the earth? So I need you to ask that to yourself. How do you represent your greatness in the earth? So how do I function when life gets crazy, or when I get, things are under pressure? Um, I go back to the decision that I made, not to give up, to say, okay, I have a purpose and I have a plan. What is that purpose and that plan? Do you know that purpose and that plan? I gave myself the permission to sit down long enough to hear what God would say, what that was. And every day I wake up, it's an opportunity for me to revisit that, to move. And so when life gets crazy, or when life hits the fan, um, as a high function woman or a person that is a caregiver, things get hard. There's the finances, there's my husband's medical bills, there's going to the hospital. One moment you're working and walking and taking care of your wife, all of a sudden, from his perspective, he can't walk and he's bedridden. And there's only so much movement. So there's all of the circumstances and situations happening that could cause a person to be paralyzed mentally, emotionally, or bankrupt, because we spent all of our savings trying to figure out how he was going to make it, or go into this doctor and that doctor. But we just decide every day that we're going to live. But the most important thing out of that is we're going to receive the joy of God, which is our strength. And we're going to smile and just continue, because there's so much more to life than what is happening to you. Life often is not necessarily what happens to you, but what happens through you for the benefit of others.
Okay, thank you so much, Julia. So, tell us how we can move from survival mode
How can we move from survival mode
into intentional action.
into intentional action? That's a really good question. Um, I go, when people ask me that question, I ask you, do you know your purpose? Do you know what you were put here to do? And that is the thing that I think we often have to ask ourselves before we do anything. Because if we don't know our purpose or know what we're here to do in the earth, it's easy to allow the circumstances that we're facing to shortchange us, or to rob us um, from the ability to see. So it it's distilled down to the decisions that we make in our mindset when we're faced with life's issues. It's a decision. It's a choice. It's, who are you innately in this earth? What were you here to do? And when you know that, and you can answer that for yourself, um, I think anybody that's facing any situation that's rather dark or big or small, can press through life's issues, if you will.
Okay. So, I don't know. Is there a practical way to move? Because most of these are just theory. Is there a practical way to actually move from survival mode into intentional action?
It is. So for me, practically speaking, when I got hit with the idea or the thought of my husband, this is a active situation that is happening right now. I can tell you. So my husband can't talk anymore. Um, there's something going on with his neurons in his brain, which doesn't allow him to speak very well. He can say yes, no, and then sometimes he can press through. So when I was faced with the idea of not having a life that I thought I was, I had to make sure that I had to look at things and say, what is the situation? How am I going to move? I developed an operational system. Most of us would say, let me hire somebody to have a caregiver. So I have someone that made a decision and I made an operation plan, if you will, right? So whatever you're facing, if you have kids, if you have a life, or if your car got wrecked, I'm just saying these are practical things that you can do. So like if I have no money and I need a job, or if my car got stolen, what do I do? Your brain starts looking for solutions when you start asking the right questions. So I would say one of the practical solutions is you can start asking questions. If you don't start asking questions, then there's a possibility that you're gonna stay stuck. A person can get emotional. When you start having emotions override the situation, that's when you can stay stuck. Okay. So one of the practical things I do every day is I ask questions. I look at the pros and cons of the situation. How am I going to help my husband? I need a solution. How am I going to help him with the doctor bills, manage the food, manage his medication, manage all of the situations that we're dealing with? How am I going to help him today? So I started asking practical situations. I think everybody should start there. Create an operational situation solution or operation plan. Um, you list what it is that you feel like you need. You override the emotion with the practicality of the situation. I think you need to sit still long enough for you to be able to say, listen to God, or whatever the download it is, whatever you believe in, whether you believe in God or the creator of the universe or whatever. I think there's a small voice that every one of us can hear, whether it's intuition or that support system, or your own voice. There's a level of practicality that lives within each one of us. I think we don't spend time enough to pay attention. So therefore, I'm just going to say this again. So when you're faced with a situation, I think you need to get still, listen to the small voice, ask questions. When you're faced with things and you start getting downloads for the answers that you're asking, or write them down because you will forget, then I think that you need to look at everything that you have available for you, and then listen again to the practical solution, pray about it before you can begin to move and make that next step. I do that every single day. Sometimes I sit outside on my balcony, and I drink tea. I'm quiet, and I think it's practical for everybody to pay attention to this, because even though it sounds really simple, it's so powerful. For example, how many of us get up every single day and then we just suddenly, we just immediately start doing things? We don't take time to rest long enough, or we go on the computer and we start looking on our phones, or we start checking our email, or we start looking for having a phone conversation or something. How do you know what that download is going to be, or what God wants to say to you and for the practical things of the day, if you don't take time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do that, right? So that's just one of the things that I do. Now it just depends on the situation. Every situation is different. But as a high capacity functioning woman, I have everything that I organize in compartments, right? So there are checklists I set aside or I set up. There are budgeting checklists. I call what I use a toolkit, and it is my command center. I used to be a chief operation officer for an educational sector. I worked in education for over 25 years. And I distilled everything that I do in my day to day and down to those things. So an operational system, I think everybody needs something. It's a notebook or a binder that helps you organize. That's very practical. If you're a mom or a dad and you make lunches, there are menus and sheets and things that will help you to stay organized. But I think everybody needs to take that practical advice first. And that is the foundation for everything that we do. We don't have much time to talk about everything, but I think everyone should start there. Does that make sense or register?
Yeah, that makes sense, Julia. So I see that you are big on faith, big on God and spirituality.
Yes, yes.
So what makes you? Why are you so big on faith, big on God? And what's the background of all this?
We didn't create ourselves.
Well, yeah, a lot of people in this world that know that they did not create themselves, but still they don't have that faith. They are not grounded in spirituality like you are.
Right, right. So for me, my faith has been developed and cultivated right over time. Um, there are moments I hated God or I hated being here, and there are moments I wanted to die. There was moments in my life that I just didn't want to be here or I didn't understand. There were moments and times where I was questioning God, right? But God has proven Himself over and over again that He's real. For example, I've had a couple out of body experiences. That's another conversation for another day. Um, I've also heard the audible voice of God when I was 12 years old. I'll tell you a quick story. My mom used to smoke really badly. When I say badly, Dominique, she used to smoke like 5 packs of cigarettes a day, crazy amount. But she used to send me to the store at midnight. She would wake up, have crying fits, emotional disturbances, and things like that. But she would always accuse me of being a happy girl. Why are you so happy? How can you sit here and tell me everything is going to be okay? How can you tell me to have faith when all of the circumstances that we're dealing with is just going so crazy? And I said, God told me it would be all right. Well, how do you know God? How did you know God say that? And it would just be something that I just knew, right? One day I went after hearing some church people, they found out that my mom was sending me to the store. They were really religious at midnight to go get her cigarettes. And they were cursing the situation. God's going to send her to hell, or you're going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get you. You shouldn't be doing all of that. So, anyway, that night after service, my mom sent me. I started becoming afraid. I'd never been afraid up until that point. I was walking to the store, this is literally maybe 5 minutes from the apartment we used to live in, with fear and trembling. I kid you not. And while I was sitting there looking around, afraid like boogeyman was going to come get me, I heard God tell me, legit tell me, be still, be not afraid, for I am with you. It was like a wind of rushing water. It was like thunder and lightning. It engulfed my entire body. And I actually put my fists up in the air like I wanted to fight somebody because I thought somebody was surrounding me, like they were there. And I say that to say every time I have doubted God or I was tempted or I didn't realize that, I didn't remember for a second because of my circumstances told me something different. God reminded me and took me to that place to remind me that He is who He is and He is real. And that I should never doubt that there is a creator that loves me, that knew me before I was even in existence, and that knew that all of my circumstances that I would ever go through would happen. And I agreed to those circumstances, and that I could trust him. I could trust the God in me, and I can trust and have faith that everything is going to turn out better than it has before. And he has proven it time and time again. Just when I thought the situation was just going to overtake me, he would remind me of the practical solutions and the applications and remind me that I should have faith and trust and believe. And the moment I did, I realized everything was going to be okay. And they are. And they are.
Okay, definitely put your trust in God, and everything's going to be okay. So, what practical steps can people take when they feel overwhelmed by life's demand?
That's a good question. So, from a neuropsychologist standpoint of view, because I'm not a neuropsychologist, but I love to study the brain. Practical steps a person can take when they feel overwhelmed. I'm going to tell you what I do. I stop in the moment and I take some deep breaths, because what you want to learn and understand is that your brain starts to go into height and flight mode. And when you get into height and flight mode, you don't think, your blood pressure goes up, your veins are dilated, and the blood, your heart starts beating really fast. So the important thing to do is to first stop, breathe, secondly, and to take deep breaths. Again, a lot of that is really simple, but when you feel overwhelmed, you need to assess why you are, but you can't get to the assessing part until you calm down. Um, there are moments in time when there's a need for us to be go into the height and flight when we are nervous or afraid, or when there's something going on that causes us to be, but then it all goes back down to that. So the practical steps is to calm down and to reflect, to get in a calm state, to be able to, and then decide and look around and to figure out what it is that we need to do and how we need to move from that point. But you always want to move from a calm state of mind, not from a reactive mind. Or the Bible says, "Be angry, but sin not." So although you may be angry, um, you don't want to do that. I have a rule of thumb. I never send emails, make decisions, or do anything that's I may or may not regret when I'm angry or hungry or sleepy. um, so when those things are happening and I want to make purchases, I make decisions, or do anything, I don't. I try to go back to the moment where I'm calm and at peace, and I can make a decision better in that moment. Is this helping anyone?
Of course. Okay. So, how do you help people turn complex situations into clear, doable next steps?
Okay, I didn't hear that question.
When people have we have some complex things to do, complex situations. How can you help them to turn those complex situations into clear and doable next steps?
It depends on what it is. As a life coach, I walk through issues, points of clarity with everyone all the time. Um, so that question usually gets distilled down in a more microscopic way when I'm working with someone on an individual thing. So it could be a project that they're working on, or someone doesn't feel confident um, in a situation, or it could be someone having a relationship and they're not sure how to move or to make the right move or the next move with their spouse. If someone's dealing with something, I have a program called Confidence to Clarity. Um, the practical solution for everyone is I help people through an analysis type of situation. I analyze, look at your situation, and then I make a practical plan for us to move forward with one-on-one coaching. Um, but if we're talking about just a generic or a specific thing. Those ideas are more dealt with when I'm working one on one with someone. So, for example, um, here's something that might sound interesting. If you ever feel like you're going to get some advice from someone, or you want to give your friends great advice, um, but you want to give them wise words, there's a phenomenon called Solomon's paradox. Have you ever heard of this before? It's a lot easier for us to advise other people on the problems than it is to advise ourselves. So it's too easy to get caught up in the rumination when we're in our head. So the fix could be simple when we're thinking about walking through ourselves. You when people you're talking to them, you can use this as a third person. You say, "What would I do in the third person?" Or if I'm talking to myself as myself. So, for example, if I say, "Hey, Julia," instead of it would cause my brain to shift into coach mode. So I have friends and they don't know that I do this. So don't tell them. Okay, Dominique? When they call me and they talk to me and they ask me for a solution, I start asking questions. When you ask someone questions, it moves them out of the negative emotion, and they start doing a funny thing. They start answering their own questions, and they start helping themselves through a solution, and they start navigating themselves out of the situation or into a better one. So in the Solomon's paradox, it was one study conducted where people who talk to themselves using the name or their third or second were better able to deal with a negative emotion than those who thought about themselves in the first person. So you using you instead of I, it causes your brain to shift again into coaching mode. And more effectively, it helps you through the explanation or the situation that you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense. Sure. The audience. So, okay. So, what advice would you give to someone who looks successful on the outside but feels overwhelmed privately? I think there are a lot of people who are on this table.
Okay. So in your conversations, a lot of times when you're feeling overwhelmed, we have a tendency to want to vent to other people or to complain. If you ever had a bad day, you might call your sister and or your brother or your neighbor, and it can feel like a really powerful thing to do. Um, but when we take stock of how we really feel after letting something out, if we feel relieved, that is likely a sign that we're sharing something that was weighing on our mind. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get relief from that conversation, even if that was the objective. So whether it's advice or a simple question you want to ask or talk to someone, I would say check your venting sessions. Um, when you're dealing with something that's overwhelming, talk to yourself in the third person. You can do that. Be a little meditative, praying. Maybe go take a walk. Um, and I also want to encourage you guys to drop damaging words from your vocabulary. Like, I should have done this, or I feel bad when this happened. A lot of times we feel burdened and pressured by a lot of responsibilities, and you feel like I'm not doing enough, or I'm bad at this or bad at that. When you talk, your brain and your body are connected, and your heart is too. Even your body will start responding how you're talking to yourself. I want you to look for a way to compliment yourself. Look for a way to find the joy in the situation. I want you to get comfortable with talking about good stuff because a lot of times we don't tell our bodies this enough, or we don't tell ourselves that we're doing a good job. Um, Sometimes if we feel overwhelmed or we feel like we're stuck, um, our minds can get to racing, and we often feel like we don't have control over things. So sometimes even something as simple as cleaning up your space, organizing your clutter, can help out a lot. And taking time to count our blessings and looking for joy in the situation can help out a lot. Um, and if you find yourself full of complaints, take time to seek out the awe. When I say awe, is AWE. When you're in the presence of something that's hard to explain, looking outside, looking at the sky, taking time to experience a fresh cup of water could be something as simple as that, or a good meal, or a hot bath. Those are some of the practical things that we can do to look at our lives and find a way to come back to center, um, when we make it more simple and realize that life is not all the hard stuff that we go through, but there are moments that we can um, handle it. It just comes back to looking at it from a practical solution and just remembering that God is God. Life is not what happens to us, but what happens through us, and that we have the ability to make a decision in all that we do. And that decision can be um, to go on a hide or flight mode, or that decision can be to say yes, um, to clarity and not chaos.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you. This has been a very exciting episode. Thank you for joining us and sharing your insights. Life rarely follows a perfect plan, but having the right perspective, tools, and support can make difficult seasons easier to navigate. The work reminds us that feeling overwhelmed does not mean we are failing. Sometimes it means we need clarity, structure, and a better next step. So, Julia, here is my final question for you. What is one action someone can take today to move from pressure to progress?
Look for the joy. Remember your favorite things. Um, Write a list of things down that make you happy. I think making sure that you shift your perspective um, in the middle of chaos or in the middle of tragedy, we can find ourselves stuck in the emotion of what just happened. But I go back to the thing that I want everyone to have and run with. Look at your situation or yourself and the circumstances. And is there something that you can do to shift? I think it is. I think we can. If you look for the joy, you make a decision to find the joy, because the joy of the Lord is our strength, or it can be. I think that can put you in a better mood and open you up for the possibilities of discovering the other things you can do to not stay stuck or not to be stuck in life.
Okay, thank you so much, Julia. So, for those that would like to connect with you, how can they do that?
Thank you. Well, if any of this has resonated with you or you want to find more, my website is www.julialynjames.com. On there, if you wanted to connect or to find out more information, I have a free book, Your Clarity and Confidence, or Clarity Session. It's free for 15 minutes. If you get into my website, you can just book a session with me to talk to me more. I also have other podcasts I'm on. I also am an author of The Diary of a Curly Haired Woman, Metaphor of Life's Curly Twists and Turns. You can find me on Amazon, Barnes and Noble bookstores, or simply go to my website. I'm also on Facebook. under Julia James. And also, you can find me on Instagram at Julia James TV. That's how you can find me.
All right. Thank you so much once again. And I really hope this message speaks to my audience. And for those who, if you know this episode is speaking to you, make sure to share it with someone out there, someone that is overwhelmed and may need clarity and needs to reduce complex actions to simple, easier steps. Julia, thank you for coming to my show and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Dominique. I appreciate your time, and I hope everyone out there has a blessed and productive rest of your evening. And don't let negative words bring you down.
Thank you so much. Amen.
Thank you.